Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Gimel Amar Aleph, 3a of Meseches Brachos, and we are starting 4 lines from the bottom of the page. The Gemara says, Ad Sof HaAshmura, it quotes the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, this was Rabbi Eliezer, that the latest time for saying Shema was Sof HaAshmura Harishon. The latest time in the evening was the end of the first watch. And the night is divided into different watches, and Rabbi Eliezer holds the end of the first watch is the latest time. Seemingly, he understands the pasuk b'shach b'cha, when you lie down, to mean when people begin to lie down. Not the whole time that they're lying down, the whole night, but when people generally go to sleep, which is by the end of the first watch. So ask the Gemara, "My kasavar Rabbi Eliezer." What does Rabbi Eliezer hold in terms of how many watches there are per night? Because later, the Gemara is going to bring a machlokas, whether there are 3 watches or 4 watches. This is going to be on the next page. So, meaning, do we divide the night into 3 parts or 4 parts, basically? So, ikasavar shalosh mishmaros havei. If Rabbi Eliezer holds that there are 3 watches to the night, so that means you take the 12 halachic hours of the night and you divide it by 3, and that would mean that the end of the first watch is 4 hours into the night. So then lema ad arba shos, then let him just say that. Just say that you have until 4 halachic hours into the night to say Shema. V'ika savar arba mishmaros havei. If he holds that there are 4 watches at night, in which case you divide the night into 4, so then the end of the first watch would be at the end of 3 hours. So then lema ad shalosh shos. So then he should just say you have until the end of the 3rd hour. Why is Rabbi Eliezer telling you you have until the end of the first watch? Just tell me how many hours you have. Says the Gemara, Li'olam kasavar shalosh mishmaros havei layla. Really, Rabbi Eliezer holds that the night is 3 has 3 watches, which means that you have until the end of the 4th hour. So why didn't he just say that? Why did he say that you have until the end of the first watch? V'hakamashmalan, what he's coming to teach you is de'ika mishmaros b'rakia, v'ika mishmaros be'ara. That there are both watches in the nighttime. There are both watches in the rakia, in the heavens, and there are also watches be'ara on the land. Which of those did we not know is subject to discussion, but it would seem that we know there are watches down here. We know there are watches on land. There are psukim, verses that describe the Rosh Hashemar. They talk about different watches in different places. So what he would be coming to tell you is that there's not only mishmaros, there aren't just watches here, but these watches correspond to the watches in heaven. The Tanya, as we learn in a Brachos, Rabbi Eliezer says, Shalosh mishmaros havei. So here we have him, this same Rabbi Eliezer, explicitly telling us that he holds that there are 3 watches. Ve'al kol mishmar u'mishmar yoshev HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And on each watch, Hashem sits, v'shoei ka'ari, and he roars like a lion. Shenemar, as the pasuk says in Yirmiyah, it says, Hashem mimarom yishag. Hashem from on high roars. Umimaon kacho yitain kolo. And from his holy abode he gives his voice. Sha'og yishag al naveo. He will, double language of roar, surely roar upon his place, over his place. So the pasuk describes Hashem roaring, whatever that might mean, and it's al naveu. We ultimately see that it's on his place. It seems to be that these sounds, that so to speak we're attributing to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, have to do with naveu, with his place, this abode, and the lack thereof, the lack of the Beis Hamikdash, the lack of Hashem's abode. Now in this pasuk it says that it uses the term sha'og, which is to roar, 3 times. And So we see that there's like 3 periods of the night where Hashem gives the Torah. That's the 3 mishmaros. Those are the 3 watches that there are in the night. And this is what Rabbi Eliezer was coming to teach me. Now it's not necessarily so clear from the Mishnah itself, because he doesn't tell us that there are mishmaros birakia in the heavens and mishmaros on the land. He just says to say Shema by the end of the first watch, and well, so just to take a step back again, I asked, I said, which of the, first of all, which did we not know? The Gemara said that he's coming to tell you that there are mishmaros, there are watches both in the Rakia, in the heavens, and on the land. Which did we not know about? So I should just point out, Rashi, I believe, sounds like he understood that it was coming to teach you that there are watches here. In other words, Rashi says, when Dibra Masla V'Hakamash Malan, Rashi says, when he gave you the siman, Shnasan L'cha simens Bang Akriya, when Rabbi Eliezer gave you the last time for reading the Shema, he gave you the siman of Sofa Ashmura, the end of the watch, V'lo Pirish L'cha siman Mefurash, and he didn't give you an explicit time. Lamedcha sheyesh heker l'chol adam b'davar ki eichi de'ika b'rakia. He's teaching you that there is a heker, there's something that's recognizable at that point. There's something that stands out for a person at that point. So Rashi understands he was trying to tell you that there's something that's going to happen, something you'll be able to note at that time that will tell you that it's that point in the evening. Just like there are these divided times in the heavens, so too you can identify when those times are on the earth. So Rashi is understanding that we would already be familiar with the idea that there are watches in the heaven, but what it's telling you is that that those watches, those periods that exist in heaven, there's identifiable marks on the earth that you can know, oh, now is that time. And that's what he was trying to bring out. And so you would know, you would have some sign that, oh, it's the end of the first watch. It's the last time for Shema. What is that? So the Gemara goes on and it says, and this is a continuation of the Brachos, Rabbi Eliezer is still talking. So, the siman ladavar, here's the siman, here's the signs to be able to recognize when the watches are over. Mishmara Rishona Chamor Noer. In the first watch, seemingly the end of the first watch, a donkey brays. So when you hear the donkeys bray in the middle of the night, then you know that the first watch has ended. Shnia Klavim Tzakim. The second time is when the dogs cry out. That's the second watch. Again, we'll see if it's the end of the second watch or the middle or what it is, but the second watch is identified by dogs calling out, dogs crying out. Shlishis, the third watch, is when Tinok Yonik Mishtei Imo. It's when baby nurses from the breast of its mother. The Isha Misaper Simbala, and when a woman starts to speak to her husband, meaning they're starting to wake up. And a wife will talk to her husband as they're waking up in the morning, and that's the third watch. So these are identifiable markings that when these things happen, basically you know what time it is. You know that when the donkey brays, that's the end of the first watch. You know that when the dogs cry out, that's, again, we'll have to see either the end of the second watch or the middle of the second watch. And when a woman starts to talk to her husband, that's also, perhaps that's the end of the last watch. We'll have to see in a moment what these markings actually represent. But Rabbi Eliezer, who decided to identify the time in the Mishnah, what's the end of Shema? What's the end time for saying the Shema? It's the end of the first watch, was telling you, and that's an identifiable mark. And just like there are divisions in the heavens of these 3 watches, there are these times are are noted on earth as well. Okay. So ask the Gemara, Ma'ika chashav Rebbe Eliezer, what are these signs that he just gave? What are they marking? I techilas mishmaros kachashiv, if they are the beginnings of each watch, that when the donkey brays, that's the beginning of the first watch, and when the dogs cry out, that's the beginning of the second watch, and when the baby nurses or a woman speaks to her husband, that's the beginning of the third watch. So then, techilas mishmar rishona siman alamali. Why does he have to give me a sign for the beginning of the first watch? Urtahu. That's when the night falls. I don't need a sign to know the beginning of the night. You don't have to say when the donkeys bray, it's the beginning of the night. I know it's the beginning of the night because it just got dark. So it doesn't seem like he's giving me the signs for the beginning of the night, for the beginning of each watch. Now, isof mishvaris kachashiv. So if he's you'll tell me he's telling me the end of each watch, the end of the first, the end of the second, the end of the third. Well, sofat mishmar achrona lamali. Why do I need one for the end of the third? Lamali simana yemamu. The daytime is the end of the third. When it's daytime, you know the third watch is ended. Ella, so rather, chashiv sof mishmara rishona. What he's actually telling you is when does the first watch end? Utrilas mishmar achrona. When does the last watch begin? V'emtzayis te'emtzayisa, and the middle of the middle one. So it would come out that, according to this answer, that the three signs that Rabbi Eliezer gave are like this. When the donkey brays, you know it's the end of the first watch. When the dogs cry out, you know it's the middle of the second watch. And when a woman speaks to her husband or a baby nurses, it's the beginning of the third watch. V'bayisema, or if you want, you can say, Kulu sof mishmaras kachashiv. No, it's all marking the end of each watch. V'chitema achrona lo tzarich. Now you'll say, like we asked before, why do I need a sign for when the third watch ends? I understand I need a sign for when the first watch ends. The end of the first watch. There's no identifiable mark in the skies. It's dark. So when the donkey brays, you know the first watch is over. And according to Rabbi Eliezer, that's the latest time to say Shema. When the dogs cry out, that's the end of the second watch. When a woman speaks to her husband, that's the end of the third watch. Why do I need to tell me that? Just tell me it's the morning. What's a practical difference? If somebody is sleeping in a dark house, there's no windows, there's no light, they don't know when the day comes, and they want to know when they can say the Shema. They don't know when it's time for Shema. But if it's the time that a woman starts to speak to her husband or a baby starts to nurse, that could be a sign that even though you don't have any light, it's already the end of the third watch, it's the morning, and it's time to get up to say Kriya Shema. So the purpose of one of these signs for the last watch will be if it's dark, and it's a dark house, there's no windows, there's no light, and so you don't know when morning comes, but there's another way to identify when the morning comes. Now, Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel Mishmei de Rav. Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel, second the name of Rav. Gimel Mishmaros Have Alayla. The night is divided into 3 watches. Ve'al kol mishmar mishmar yosh v'kadosh baruch hu v'shoei kari. And for each watch, Kadosh Baruch Hu sits and roars like a lion. Again, the pasuk earlier didn't mention a lion. It just said Hashem mimarom yishag. Hashem roars from on high. But we always usually associate from other psukim, that verb, shoeg, with a lion. So it says here that Hashem roars like a lion. The Omer, and he says, woe to my children that because of their sins I destroyed my house. And I burned my sanctuary. And I exiled them to amongst the nations. So it seems that these times of the night are times that HaKadosh Baruch Hu thinks about the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. And the question would be why? So I saw Tosfos Arash says that there were, in the Beis HaMikdash, there were times of the year that at each of these moments they would clear the Mizbeach. So normally they clear the Mizbeach at daybreak. but there were busier times of the year where they would do it earlier in the night, in the middle of the night still, sometimes at the end of the second watch, sometimes even as early as the end of the first watch. And so those times were when they would clear off the Mizbeach. That was like that's a meaningful moment where Kadosh Baruch Hu looks down and says, "Whoa, that the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed." And the Rush also says that these are times for tefillah as well. They're times for tefillah over the Beis Hamikdash. So there's significance to these moments. And again, we're not going so in depth, but the different signs that the Gemara gives for the times of the donkey braying and the dog barking and the woman nursing. So besides for that they are meant on a pshat level, on a simple level as identifiers, but there's also meaning behind those examples that they could be interpreted further. Okay. Tanya. We're learning a Brachos. So I think apropos of talking about Hashem crying, so to speak, over the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, we bring this story. Amar Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi said, one time I was traveling on the way, and I entered a ruined building, a ruined shul maybe. It was a destroyed building amongst the destruction of Yerushalayim. It says, I entered there to daven. Elijah the prophet, he should be remembered for good. He came, and he guarded the door. And he waited He waited till I finished my tefillah. Says Rabbi Yossi, after I finished my tefillah, Amar li, he said to me, Shalom alecha, Rabbi. He said, peace unto you, Rabbi. That's what Eliyahu said to Rabbi Yossi. Ve'amarti lo, and I said to him, Shalom alecha, Rabbi Amari. Peace unto you, my Rabbi and my teacher. Ve'amar li, and then Eliyahu said to me, to Rabbi Yossi, Bini, my son, mipnei ma nechnasta lechurba zu. Why did you enter this ruin? Amarti lo, I said to him, Lispal, to daven. Ve'amar li, and he said to me, Haya l'cha lispal baderech. You should have davened on the way. You shouldn't have entered this ruin. Ve'amarti lo, and I said to him, Mistyarya yisi shema yafsiku bi over drachim. I was afraid that maybe some passers-by, some travelers, will interrupt me if I daven on the road. Ve'amar li, and Eliyahu said to me, Haya l'cha lispal tefillah katzara. You should have davened a short tefillah if you were worried about being interrupted. But Osa Shah, says Rabbi Yossi at that time, Lamati mimenu shlosha devarim. I learned three things from him. Lamati she'en nichnasim lechurva. First of all, I learned you don't enter ruins. It's dangerous. A ruined building. Lamati she'mispalim baderech. And I learned that you can daven on the way if you need to. Lamati she'mispalel baderech mispalel tefillah katzara. I also learned that if you're going to daven on the road, you should daven a tefillah katzara, a short tefillah. Rashi says it refers to Havinenu, which is going to be discussed later in the Masechta. It's a shortened version of Shemona Esrei. Ve'amar li, and then Eliyahu said to me, Bini, my son Rabbi Yossi, ma kol shamata b'churba zu. What sound did you hear in this churba, in this destroyed building? Ve'amarti lo, I said to him, Shamati baskol. I heard a baskol, a heavenly voice. Sheminahem es kiyona. It was cooing like a dove. Ve'omeris, and it said, woe to my children that because of their sins I destroyed my house. And I destroyed and I burned my sanctuary. And I sent them into exile to amongst the nations. The Amarli, and Eliyahu said to me, by your life and by your head, the life of your head, some expression. Lo shazu bilvado meriskach. It wasn't only this moment that baskol, that the heavenly voice comes out and says this. Elo b'chol yom bayom. Every day, shalosh pa'amim, 3 times a day, omeriskach. It says this. V'lozu bilvad. But not only that, so that would be like we just said, the previous Gemara, that there was talking about at night. Here it sounds like even in the day, 3 times a day, Hashem says, woe to me that I destroy my Beis Hamikdash. I burn my sanctuary, and I exile my children. But then he says, Eliyahu v'lozu bilvad, but not only that, when the Jewish people enter their shuls and their batei medrash, their houses of study, and they say that Hashem's great name should be blessed. Sounds like Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach. When they say that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu minanei arosho, Hashem nods his head, ve'omer, so to speak, ve'omer, and he says, Ashrei HaMelech Shem Mekasing Osav Aveso. Praised is the king fortunate is the king who they praise in his house. Kach malu la'av shehigla es banav, and woe to the father who exiled his children. Va'elohem labanim shegolu mi'al shulchan avim, and woe to the children who have been exiled from the table of their father. So much to unpack in the story, but just briefly, so Rabbi Yossi goes, he davens in this churv on this destroyed building, and Eliyahu Navi sees him there. He says, "What are you doing?" He says, I had to daven. I didn't want to daven on the way. I would be interrupted." So Eliyahu says, "No, you should have davened on the way. You should have davened a short tefillah. That way, you won't get interrupted." And then they have this discussion. Rabbi Yossi says, "I heard a heavenly voice that was basically mourning over the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash." And Eliyahu says, not only now, but 3 times a day, Hashem mourns over the Beis HaMikdash. But when the Jewish people enter shuls and they daven and they say Yehei Shmei Rabba, so there Hashem says, how great that they're praising me in my house, and woe to me that I exiled them. So just one idea that I once saw from Rabbi Yashiv is that Rabbi Yossi had entered a ruined shul, and the idea was that he was davening in a place that kind of represented a lack of respect for holy places, for a shul, for the Beis HaMikdash, and so within those walls, the Baskal is heard saying, "Woe to my children, that I had to destroy the Beis HaMikdash, so they didn't treat it properly." But, says Eliyahu Navi, when they enter their shuls, when they do enter their shuls, and they use their shuls properly, and they say Yehei Shmei Rabba in their shuls, so then Hashem remembers, wow, how fortunate to have children who praise me in my house. And there Hashem says, woe to me that I had to exile them. But there's a yearning there that to be able to have this same experience in the real Beis HaMikdash, not just in the Mikdash Mat, in the mini Beis HaMikdash in a shul, but that it should happen in the real Beis HaMikdash. Okay, continues the Gemara, 2 lines from the bottom. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, for 3 reasons one may not enter a churva, a ruined building. Because of suspicion, that we're worried somebody goes into a place like that, maybe they're meeting a zona, a prostitute there. Number 2, mipnei amapolis, because of falling beams and stuff, it's dangerous. And number 3, mipnei amazikin, because of demons. Okay, so there's 3 reasons not to enter a churva. And the Gemara wants to know, why do I need all 3? Just tell me one, and that's a reason not to, so don't go. So it says, mipnei chashad, it says because of suspicion of inappropriate activities. So, v'tepikoi mishum mapolis. Just, isn't it enough just to give the reason that it's dangerous? There's mapolis, there's falling beams, falling walls. So, answers the Gemara, top next page, v'chadti. We could be talking about, it's a new ruin. I wasn't really sure what a new ruin is. Rashi says, it recently fell, but it's still strong. So it collapsed, but the walls are strong, I guess. So the roof caved in or something like that, but the walls are still strong. So you don't have to, it's not dangerous, the walls aren't going to fall over. But there's other reasons they're not to go, because of suspicion. Okay, but still, why do you have to come on to suspicion? Just tell me, there's demons, don't go because of demons. Betray, we're talking about where 2 people go. If 2 people go, there's no problem with demons. Demons don't come when there are 2 people or more. So betray, so then if there's 2 people, chashad na'amilaka, then there shouldn't be any suspicion. You're with 2 people, it's not suspicious. We won't think that they're doing Avera. Betreyu Pritzi. The Gemara says, no, we're talking about where there's two people, but they're known to be promiscuous. So they do create chashad. They do create suspicion if they enter such a place. So that's why we need the reasoning of chashad, because there are situations of suspicion, because there are situations where mapolis, of a falling wall, is not relevant, if it's a new building, or if mazikin, demons, are not relevant, if it's two people. Okay. So mibnei mapolis. Now the Gemara said because of falling walls, typically mishum chashad. Isn't it enough just to say because of suspicion? Why do I also need the reason? Because it's dangerous. Answers the Gemara. Or typically mishum chashad umaziking, and the demons. Why do I need to come on to that? It's dangerous. The answer is bitrei v'kashri. What if it's two people and they're known to be kosher people? They're not suspicious. So there's no demons because it's two people. And there's no suspicion because they're two ksherim, they're two upstanding people. But still they shouldn't go in because of mapolis, because of dangerous falling walls. Okay. Mibnei amazikin, we said don't go because of demons, but typically mibnei chashad mapolis. Is it enough just to tell me because of suspicion and because of falling walls? Why do I need to say because of mazikin? So the answer is bechur b'chati uvitrei ukshari. We could be talking about where it's a new ruin, so the walls are still strong, so it's not dangerous. And there's no suspicion because it's trei v'kasher, it's two people who are upstanding. So the only issue is demons. But didn't we say that there's no issue of demons when you have two people? Ibetrei v'kashri. Ibetrei, if there's two people, mazikin namilak, and there's no concern of demons either. Says the Gemara, b'mekaman chayshinan. No. If it's their place, meaning if it's a place that we know that the demons hang out, it's their hangout, so then even if there's two people, we're still concerned of mazikin. So we need the reason of mazikin for a case where it's two people and they're ksherim, so we're not worried about chasham, we're not worried about suspicion. The walls are still strong, we're not worried about danger. And really, we shouldn't have to worry about demons, except we're talking in a case where they hang out in that place, so then even two people have to be concerned. Or you can say le'olam b'chad. Really, it could be that it's only one person. Uvechur b'chadti dekai b'davra. It could be it's a new wall, a new ruin. So the walls are strong, and it's out in the fields. Dahasa mishum chashad lekad, because there's no suspicion. Da'isha b'davra lo shlicha, because women, you're not going to find women out in the field like that. Umish mazikin eka, but you still have a problem mazikin because of demons, because it's only one person. So the scenario where we might have to come on to the issue of mazikin and tell you don't go because of mazikin is if the walls are strong and it's out in the field, there's no concern of suspicion. Nobody's going to suspect you of anything because it's out in the fields. That's not where any zona would be. So, but still you shouldn't go in because of mazikin if it's one person at least. Okay, we'll hold there.